historic visit. The Vatican announces the Holy Father's first trip abroad since before the coronavirus pandemic, and it's a place no pope has ever been before. Controversial pick. Presumptive President-elect Joe Biden selects the California Attorney General to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Senate debate in Georgia. Name-calling at one debate and a no-show in the other Georgia race. And approving vaccines, the latest in the race for a coronavirus vaccine. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, December 7th, 2020. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The Vatican announces a historic trip for Pope Francis. He will become the first pope ever to visit Iraq. It will be the Holy Father's first scheduled apostolic trip since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. In January, the Holy Father met with Iraqi President Barham Saleh. They discussed the importance of stability and preserving the Christian presence. Pope Francis has repeatedly expressed his desire to visit Iraq, and with pandemic conditions permitting, his trip will cover 4 provinces in 4 days in March. Joining us now with more is EWTN News Rome correspondent Colm Flynn. Colm, great to see you as always. Tell us more about this trip Pope Francis is planning to take next year.
Good evening, Tracy. Well, Pope Francis has announced that he will visit Iraq next year from the 5th to the 8th of March. Of course, taking into consideration the pandemic and whether he will be allowed to travel internationally. But if the trip does go ahead, this will be the first apostolic trip in 15 months, his last trip being to Thailand and Japan in November of 2019. Now, when he does visit Iraq, he's planning to visit 4 provinces while he is there. Baghdad, the plain of Ur, which is also linked to Abraham, the city of Erbil, as well as Mosul and Karakosh. Now, the Pope has expressed interest in visiting the Middle East many times in the past. Even in June of last year, in a meeting with Catholic aid agencies, he expressed his deep desire to visit the country of Iraq. And, of course, the Pope has prayed for peace in Iraq on many occasions. And it seems, Tracy, that his trip would be welcome in the country because in an interview with the SIR news agency last year, Iraqi Cardinal Louis Raphael Seiko, he said that the people of Iraq would welcome the Holy Father with enthusiasm because they hold him in high esteem because of his simplicity and his nearness.
Well, as you know, Pope Francis met with the Iraqi president earlier this year. Can you remind us about that meeting?
Yeah, Tracy, when Pope Francis met with Barham Saleh, the president of the Republic of Iraq, that was on January the 25th of this year. And it's believed the two talked about bilateral relationships between the Vatican and the country of Iraq, and also the challenges that the country faces in terms of stability and reconstruction. Remember, given its turbulent past. They also talked about the challenges to the Christian community there, of which there are many. The Vatican said that their conversations focused on preserving the historical presence of Christians in the country and the significant contributions that Christians can bring to reconstruct the social fabric in society. Now, safety and security is a big concern in the country of Iraq, and the Holy Father mentioned to the President the need to guarantee the safety and security of Christians in the country. So much of their discussion was focused on peace.
Colm, do we know exactly how many Christians are there in Iraq?
We do, Tracy, and the situation is very uneasy for Christians in the country, and their presence, the community, the number of them has greatly diminished over the past 2 decades. For example, there were close to 1.5 million Christians in the country. That was prior to the US-led coalition. Then ISIS groups took over the Nineveh Plain. That was a region that was primarily occupied by Christians, and the ISIS groups forced many of them to flee. And now in the country, they reckon there's around 300,000 Christians left. So church leaders are trying to encourage the Christian families to return to their homeland, to bring Christianity back to the country and help rebuild the nation.
Well, Colm, thank you so much for that report. Colm Flynn, EWTN Newsroom correspondent.
Thank you, Tracy.
Joining us now on Skype is Chaldean Archbishop Bashar Warda of Erbil in Iraq. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us, what does this announced trip to Iraq mean for the Christian communities in the country?
Well, it's a very joyful announcement. Here we've been told in the Bible that Abraham waited for so long, for many years, 25 years, to get his promised son. And we, as Iraqis, waited for this papal visit for more than 20 years. Probably, Saint John Paul II wanted really to start the celebration Jubilee year from Ur of the Chaldeans. At that time, he could not really do it, but here we are. This really present and joyful time that finally we've got this visit. It's a very, very, very special moment for us, and it's just the starting, the preparation spiritually and pastorally for this important visit.
Yeah, very exciting indeed. And I do understand the Holy Father's visit will include the Nineveh Plain, an area devastated from the attacks by the Islamic State from 2014 to 2016. What will Pope Francis see when he's on the ground?
Well, everyone knows that these lands were not forgotten, especially the people who were being persecuted by ISIS were not forgotten by His Holiness. He was always praying, and in fact, in 2014, he recorded a special message for the people who've been really driven out of their homes, and he encouraged always for everyone, for all people to help the Christians and Yazidis to go back and rebuild these lands. Hopefully, this time he will see them back rebuilding. And he will see himself that the efforts of rebuilding these lands is there. People want also to live in dignity, wants to stay there with jobs and with proper education and healthcare. And he will see that, yes, those people have been working hard with people around the world, Christians around the world, churches, Catholic aid agencies, dioceses, Christians from the world, Catholics everywhere. You could tell so many people who've been really helping, like Aid to the Church in Need, ACN, Knights of Columbus. So many dioceses around the world were there to help, to respond to the call of His Holiness to help those Christians. So hopefully he will see people there. Unfortunately, we say majority of them left, or some of them still waiting for their homes to be built, but the signs of hope is there.
And I know the Vatican says that it will take into consideration the coronavirus pandemic. What's the current situation in Iraq, and how has COVID-19 impacted Christians there?
Well, it varies from place to place. Here in Erbil, it was really devastating more in September and October, November. It's getting less cases now, while in other places the numbers rising. So it varies from place to place. We could tell that in the big Christian cities and towns, the situation is stable, and the church was quite close to all the cases as much as we can to help and really be with them. So it depends on where you are talking, but we could say so far, as it stands now, it's much better than it was in previous months.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Tonight, the presumptive president-elect's pick for Health Secretary is setting off a firestorm among Catholic advocates over the fight for the unborn and religious freedom. This, as President Donald Trump speaks out today on the election that he claims was rigged, even as the state of Georgia says the count is done. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening. Joe Biden has tapped California Attorney General Xavier Becerra to be the nation's next health secretary. He, of course, would first need to be confirmed. Pro-life advocates very worried about this move.
California Attorney General Xavier Becerra is coming under intense scrutiny tonight from pro-life advocates.
Xavier Becerra, along with incoming Vice President Kamala Harris, are the most anti-pro-life pregnancy center officials ever in the history of any administration.
And Tom Glessner believes the confirmation will happen.
We can expect a lot of mischief they're going to attempt to do with those two in power.
The Joe Biden campaign called Xavier Becerra a longtime champion of expanding access to health care. But it's Xavier Becerra's track record that is raising huge red flags for pro-life groups. Xavier Becerra spearheaded the lawsuit against the Little Sisters of the Poor in an effort to deny them an exemption to the HHS contraceptive mandate. And Xavier Becerra defended a bill that would have forced pro-life pregnancy centers to post signs advertising state-funded abortions. Meanwhile, the election.
He's the greatest wrestler probably ever.
President Donald Trump awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to wrestling great Dan Gable, and soon after slammed the election outcome.
It was a rigged election. You look at the different states, the election was totally rigged. It's a disgrace to our country. It's like a third world country.
Meanwhile, in Georgia.
Today, the Secretary of State's office will be recertifying our state's election results.
And today, President Donald Trump tweeted, the Republican governor of Georgia refuses to do signature verification, which would give us an easy win. What's wrong with this guy? What is he hiding? It's a claim that Twitter flagged as disputed.
We have now counted legally cast ballots 3 times, and the results remain unchanged.
Also tonight, the White House is honoring the memory of the more than 2,400 Americans who lost their lives 79 years ago today at Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. And President Donald Trump says his friend and personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, who's been diagnosed with COVID-19, is doing very well. Tracy?
White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. Thank you so much, Owen. And coming up later in the newscast, we'll have an in-depth analysis of presumptive President-elect Joe Biden's HHS pick. Tonight, Georgia voters are faced with deciding which party controls the U.S. Senate as twin runoff elections on January 5th come down to the wire. This as the dust settles after last night's debates and a high-profile no-show. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
That's right, Tracy, a big no-show. You know, Republican Senator David Perdue said last November that he would skip last night's debate, and he stuck to his guns. Meanwhile, the other incumbent, Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler, says that she needs a victory in order to prevent a complete Democratic control of Washington. Excitement in Georgia this weekend as Senate campaigns hit their stride, but it was on the debate stage Sunday night that 2 candidates faced off.
Our freedoms are under attack in this country. The religious freedom, the right to life, the Second Amendment. But my opponent, radical liberal Raphael Warnock, is a socialist.
The thing about me running for the Senate is that this gives me an opportunity to work on the issues I've been working on for years. I've been fighting for access to affordable health care. I've been fighting for voting rights.
Earlier in the night, an empty podium. Democratic Senate candidate Jon Ossoff criticized GOP Senator David Perdue for skipping Sunday's debate. Ossoff says if Republicans win these 2 Senate seats, it will lead to the obstruction of the Democratic agenda.
They're going to try to do to the Biden-Harris administration exactly what they tried to do to President Barack Obama. It will be gridlock.
Republican Senator David Perdue said he and Senator Loeffler will win their jobs back.
Right now, we got 2 seats and they all want it, and we're not going to let them have it, right?
At a rally in Georgia Saturday for both GOP candidates, President Trump laid out Democrats' plans if they win these Senate seats.
They want to destroy the sanctity of the Supreme Court, the importance of the Supreme Court, the majesty of the Supreme Court. They'll terminate religious liberty, cancel free speech, and force you to fund extreme late-term abortion.
Of course, voters will ultimately determine on whether or not David Perdue made the right decision to skip that debate. Meanwhile, just minutes after the debate, David Perdue's campaign manager put out a statement saying that Jon Ossoff lost the debate to himself. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. A bipartisan group of lawmakers are closer to unveiling the text of their proposal for more COVID relief funds. Lawmakers from the House Problem Solvers Caucus are among those hammering out final details, which include Republicans' calls for COVID-19 liability protections, as well as Democrats' calls for immediate funding for state and local governments. The U.S. could be just days away from approving its first coronavirus vaccine. The Food and Drug Administration could give the Pfizer vaccine emergency use authorization as soon as Thursday. Shipments would then be sent off to where the vaccine is needed most. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, the Pfizer vaccine has already been approved by British regulators, and now the U.S. is close behind. It's possible the elderly and healthcare workers could start receiving shots of this vaccination soon after FDA approval. Here's what Dr. Anthony Fauci had to say today.
Help is really right around the corner. We're going to start distributing vaccine doses to healthcare providers and people in nursing homes and other facilities literally within a week or two. It'll be in the middle or end of December.
Dr. Fauci says as we get into January, even more vaccine doses will become available to an even wider range of people. Meanwhile, today in the UK, the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine was delivered in Wales ahead of what will be the largest immunization program in British history. The first COVID-19 vaccinations are due to be administered there starting tomorrow. As Catholics consider taking the vaccine, the National Catholic Bioethics Center says the Pfizer vaccine was not produced using aborted fetal cell lines. Next week, the FDA could give emergency authorization to a vaccine developed in a similar fashion by Moderna. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight. Coming up, Spain announces new measures to celebrate Christmas during the pandemic. Spain is launching its Christmas campaign to contain the coronavirus and is pledging and pleading for people to follow the social distancing rules. Spain's health minister says that people will be restricted from traveling between some regions. In addition, an overnight curfew will be imposed on Christmas and gatherings will be limited to 10 people. But today, scenes of crowded streets are raising questions over whether people will actually follow the rules. EWTN is launching a new service in Spain on tomorrow's Feast of the Immaculate Conception. The head of EWTN Spain says, quote, "We will pray the rosary, we will have adoration and Holy Mass every day. That is everything that feeds the life of the Christian, but there will also be much more because it will be a program for the people of the parish and outside the parish. It will be a channel for everyone." The president of Egypt is defending a crackdown on critics and says religion should not overtake priorities over human values.
قيم دينية. المرتبة بتاعت القيم الدينية أعلى كتير.
President El-Sisi was referring to the publication of Mohammed cartoons in France. He is on a two-day visit to Paris. French President Emmanuel Macron says Europeans consider human values as superior to everything else. Pope Francis revamped the Holy See's financial watchdog, changing its name to the Supervisory and Financial Information Authority. The president, Carmelo Barbagallo, says the changes ordered by the Holy Father will strengthen the Vatican's financial responsibilities. The activities will be divided into 3 units: vigilance, rules, and legal affairs and financial information. Up next, Pope Francis offers a message of hope for this Advent season. We have more reaction now to presumptive President-elect Joe Biden's nominee to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. If confirmed, Xavier Becerra would have a key role in crafting public health policy during a pandemic and in a position to make policy decisions with far-reaching consequences. Joining me now on Skype is Jeanne Mancini, president of the March for Life. Jeanne, welcome back. Always great to see you. First off, I want to get your reaction to today's announcement. What does it signal to pro-lifers?
It's terrible for pro-lifers. Basically, Joe Biden is making good on his promise to be the most pro-abortion president in history. This is horrific. I mean, he couldn't have appointed anyone worse for this particular position, in my humble opinion.
Jeanne, what concerns you the most about Becerra's record? And as you see it, what are some of the pro-life gains that could be in jeopardy if this nomination goes through?
Everything. What concerns me the most? Oh my gosh, there's a list of about 20 things. So he is terrible, obviously, on Roe v. Wade, taxpayer funding for abortion, voted against it when he was a congressman. Protecting minors in relation to abortion, voted against that, Sienna, voted against Protecting Unborn Child Protection Act, voted against partial birth abortion, or voted for partial birth abortion, voted against conscience protections. I mean, human cloning, he's for human cloning, sex selection abortion, he's for it. I mean, you name it, he's for it. And he's being nominated to the nation's top health position. He doesn't have a health background. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer and he's a politician. I mean, he's been in politics for about 20 years, and this is a really, really scary thing.
Let's talk about religious freedom concerns in healthcare.
Yeah.
What's at stake there for pro-lifers?
Well, of course, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, expanded abortion probably more than Roe v. Wade. That's what was said at the time, under the auspices of emergency contraception, et cetera. And Becerra is a huge proponent of the ACA, and I think so what we saw under the Obama administration, specifically under Secretary Sebelius, the then HHS secretary, was, you know, any kind of room for evaluation or interpretation, they went far to the left on abortion policy, and that's really what was scariest. So we'll see Becerra take what Sebelius did and push that even farther now.
Jeanne, what about next steps for pro-lifers?
Pray, fast, and don't worry, to quote Padre Pio. But in all sincerity, it's really important that we focus a little bit on Georgia right now so that we can block some of the things that will come down from the administration and that we can block some of the bad things that will happen through HHS. We need to keep the Senate. It's really, frankly, dire to keep the Senate in this particular situation. I mean, guys, pray, get your sleep, and put your running shoes on, because we've got our work cut out for us with this so-called Catholic president and his administration.
Well, Jeanne, what about March for Life? Obviously, this announcement opens up a lot more now when it comes to folks coming out and marching.
Oh, yeah, we will march this year. It's amazing how many people are asking, will you march in this COVID environment? Guys, we've marched for 47 years. We will march again this January. There is no sacrifice too much. Now, of course, we're going to have all sorts of safety precautions in place so that we can protect people from this terrible pandemic. But we march for the inherent dignity of the human person, of the unborn, and we will be marching again. And with all that's happening in politics and with this new radically pro-abortion administration, the most pro-abortion ever in the history of this country, we've got all the more reason to unite, to be strong together, and to march.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jeanne, for coming on. We always appreciate your time. Jeanne Mancini, president of the March for Life. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
And finally tonight, Pope Francis says no pandemic can turn off the light and joy of Christmas.
Non c'è pandemia, non c'è crisi che possa spegnere questa luce.
Speaking to pilgrims in St. Peter's Square, the Holy Father said Christmas decorations are signs of hope, but he says to look beyond the symbols and understand their meaning. That is, God's love was revealed to the world through Jesus. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.